Welcome. I'm Alfred Lambremont Webre, and here we are. We're triangulating between Canada and Australia along the Pacific Rim, and between Vancouver and Melbourne, and what other city are we?
Well, it's Queensland.
Oh, Queensland. Good. So it's thing, and I'm Alfred Lambremont Webre, and we are with two distinguished, I would say, new humans. And we're with Mary Rodwell, who was with us with her earlier book, Awakenings, and now with her new book, The New Human, and with Dr. Maree Batchelor, who has been with us and who has a chapter actually in Mary Rodwell's book, The New Humans, and who is an example of the modern shaman who's graduated from being an MD into a new human MD, multidimensional. MD stands for multidimensional doctor. I'm just being a little light-humored on a summer afternoon, early morning in Australia. Welcome to you both. And I feel very honored to be in your presence because I've learned so much from you both. You know, I was reading Mary, and I had occasion today in preparation for our interview actually to go back again and to go through your book, which I recommend to everyone here. It's called The New Human, Awakening to Our Cosmic Heritage. And I recommend this to everyone who is awakening, and in whatever stage you may find yourself, you will find something here that will, you know, reflect back to you what your state is and, you know, what your path may be. And I was reading part of the introduction by Dr. Leo Sprinkle, who also wrote an introduction for my book, Exopolitics. And I find that Dr. Sprinkle has an ability to go very deeply into these things within the rigor of, you know, an academic examination. And so he's saying, quote, Mary Rodwell found that many participants, and I guess by participants here, we're talking about young children, perhaps young adults or others, that are involved in interactions with extraterrestrials. Many participants changed their viewpoint about these encounters. They were not abducted, taken away from Earth. They were adducted, ADDUCTED, parenthesis, taken toward the stars, abducted, taken toward the stars. From a multidisciplinary perspective, many participants viewed themselves as developing a multidimensional perspective about their encounters with ETs. These encounters were viewed as a physical, biological, psychological, spiritual events. And the effect was to develop a purpose or personal mission to assist Earth or humanity. And that was Dr. R. Leo Sprinkle, and also reflecting there the views of the late Dr. Roger Lear, whose views he was also reflecting. And I just thought that that would be a good point of departure for an introductory discussion to say, introduce our audience to say what a new human is and what are the qualities and characteristics of new humans. I actually went through some pages where there are these long lists of characteristics, and I went, oh my God. So, yeah, so perhaps this is really your field, and so introduce us all to the new human, Mary.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Alfred. And of course, I've got so much respect for you and for Dr. Leo Sprinkle, who wonderfully gave that introduction. And because of his research, he's been so insightful. The fascinating thing for me in my journey with this is going from coming with people that were apparently traumatized to start with. Everything that you saw in the media was, the evil aliens are out to get you. They're taking you in the middle of the night. You've got no choice in the matter, etc., etc. So I came in thinking that was primarily the reason why I was offering myself as a counselor for those to help them through their trauma of this experience. But the fascinating thing was that even those that were traumatized were often more traumatized by the unknown rather than what really happened. And when I used to take them into, hypnosis, they would suddenly find themselves in an environment where they were able to understand that although genetic material was taken, often there were healing procedures done, education, what I call the space schools. They were taken by their family of star family to their planets of origin, shown their real soul family. They were coming in as they discovered on a soul journey with a mission to help this planet evolve. So this was from the abductee, scary kind of sense, right up to the point where, as I said in Awakening, how it transforms your life, how this contact transforms it was fascinating. So in the time that I ended up writing the book, I was quite clear that a majority of the spectrum had very positive experiences. And that's been validated absolutely now by the organization of the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters, because we found 85% of the over 4,000 individuals surveyed in 600 questions, 85% became changed in a positive psycho-spiritual way, would not change their experiences. And about 10% only were still in a space where they felt that this wasn't okay, or were still working through their experiences. Now that in itself is something that's qualified what I'd sensed all those years ago, which has been fantastic. We've now got it in a number of languages. And again, we're getting this feedback that 40 to 50% have healing procedures on the craft, that they talk about being schooled on the craft, and there was a very big DNA component here, which Dr. Roger Lear was something many years ago when he wrote for the introduction for Awakening. He was aware that these star children were on the planet. He, apart from taking out the implants, he became very aware that a lot of the children were more advanced developmentally that couldn't be explained by better health, etc., etc. 60 to 80% developmental changes, 60 to 80% were accelerated over 40 years with his research. So here we have a doctor that is looking at this and saying, I am seeing an upgrade, and it is due to extraterrestrial intervention in our bodies and minds. So it became, not only through my own research, but through the research of the foundation, that we're qualifying that this will turn ufology on its head. In everything that the media knows will be turned on its head through these statistics. And we're actually now going to produce a book with that understanding. So having said all that, my research has gone into what I call the information, not just from the experiencer. And when I say the experiencer, I found that it's an intergenerational experience, that if you've got a particular genetic if you like, identity or signature, that this goes through family lines. And that was what Dr. Lear and many others, and we know this is a pattern of experience now, that from looking at it genetically, that when you talk to the experiencer, they'll say, oh, maybe my mum was having things go on, although she didn't want to talk about it. Grandma was a bit unusual, or we used to think she was a bit, strange. And you then can start to see the family line, whether it was mother or father, etc. But what was interesting was, of course, it goes down into the children. Now, that was very significant for me, because they were saying my child is, I'm sure, having experiences like me. And they would explain what the child was saying, even at 4 or 5, saying, you're not my real family. My family's in space. And I want to go home, is the other thing that they would say. But what was fascinating with that was that this was, with the children, conscious recall. This wasn't through hypnosis. This was absolute conscious recall. And the interesting thing with that is, under 10, what child watch talk shows on this? What child reads books on this? And yet are talking about complex subjects like black holes. One young lady of 8 telling me that she was taken by her ET, this ET being to be inside a black hole, and was explaining how planets were exploding and coming back together again. She was shown the physics of it, and then taken into a wormhole and seeing, she said, dinosaurs in real time. So they were being shown everything about time and space. These are the kinds of things the children talk about, portals and vortices, and their understanding of their origins on other planets. But what was also fascinating is these children are often diagnosed as having some kind of dysfunction, such as ADHD, Asperger's, autism, or certain types of autism, dyslexia. So how is it then, if they're an upgrade, why would they in fact have these kinds of issues? And that was what I call the new programs of the new human. What I'm discovering is that the children that have these so-called dysfunctions are in fact a lot more multidimensionally aware. So they struggle with 3D programming. And I suspect that's a deliberate protocol, because what it means is that they're not being easily programmed back into the old paradigm that the rest of us have been conditioned into, as believing that's all there is to reality. So these children, in other words, are much harder to program, because they're more in touch with their multidimensional selves. So and this was what was fascinating, because most of the time, as I say, these are considered dysfunctional. And to go into that in the book, I've got experts in those fields that are explaining exactly that they've noticed with autistic children, for example, that they are, it appears to be very telepathic, for example. And then you've got the ADHDs. And one of the fascinating things with ADHD was explained to me about the way that the ADHD operates. And a lovely gentleman you probably know well, Alfred, called Neil Gold. Neil is in his 50s, early 60s maybe now, in Hong Kong, wrote the book Close Encounters of the ADHD Kind, retranslates his experience in always dialed into higher dimensions because he always saw reality differently. So the clues have come more and more from educators that have got in touch with me that are saying these children are different. We can't program them the same because they are wired differently. And they're wired differently because they're meant to be wired differently. Because what we're doing is now stepping into the new reality where the new human, which is all these children, are already there, and the rest of us are catching up, like Dr. Batchelor, for example, who had her own activation, where now she is also stepped into her multidimensional nature. So the rest of us are being brought along through the children, their frequencies, their awareness, but also through the galactic frequencies now on the planet, not only through the children, but through the expressions of contact, through the scripts, the light language, crop circles, the music frequencies that are coming in, the symbols. All of these different things are activating, as Dr. Batchelor knows from her own experience. So what is happening is that they are triggering the older generations of waves of those of us that are star seeds and activating us to bring us up to the point where we are in the same place as the children. So in essence, that's what the new human is.
So the new human seems like a process, really. There are different communities who might express it differently. There are communities that call it ascension. Would you say, or not?
Yes,
In a certain sense.
Yes, it's, you know, Dr. Lena Olson, a molecular biologist who I reference in my book a great deal, because she's also an experiencer and she calls herself a letter person because she's got stroke, a little bit of Asperger's, a little bit of ADHD, a little bit of autistic aspects to her. And what she's saying is that she believes that on the planet we're separating out into two major frequencies, what she calls we're making a soul's choice. One of them is the low frequency people that are going to stay in 3D, and the others are the high frequency people that have chosen to ascend into a higher frequency for the new earth, for the new evolutionary process of humanity. So we're making a soul choice to decide to go either one way or another. And if you look at the planet now, we have these extreme polarities of those that are very entrenched in 3D and those that are looking and seeking for a higher awareness of a higher purpose. And it's becoming more and more very much that polar opposite. But that's how she interprets this shift in consciousness.
Right, and what I found so extraordinary and interesting is that all of us in this field seem to be doing research in our own little fields, but all of the research is converging and is complementary. For example, I've been off for the last 3 or 4 years doing research on a model that takes the universe and integrates it into the multiverse and integrates it into the omniverse, which is a model of the ecology of dimensions in which we all exist, with all of the interdimensional intelligences. And that model describes the process that researchers such as yourself report at the fine detail when treating groups of individuals and intelligences dealing in what we would call the dimensional ecology between a specific set of extraterrestrials and a specific set of individuals, beings, children in a particular community. Each of your chapters is about a group of children or individuals or a family, and they're all cut up in a dimensional ecology with interdimensional beings. And so that they're different ones of they're different researchers in our field who are all studying, you call it the elephant, different parts of the elephant. And some of us are studying the whole ecology of the field. And you can really go in there and study the individual consciousness, and then how, you know, the brain chemistry and the DNA and all of that fit together. Do you have any insights on that or comments on that?
I'm a little bit of there's something called a bird called a jackdaw that looks at anything, looks bright and interesting, and picks it up because it's shiny and puts it into its nest and has a little. I feel I'm a little bit like the jackdaw. Anything that looks in, I find myself picking up and thinking, oh, I wonder where that goes in this huge matrix jigsaw that is what we call reality, you know. And one of the fascinating things for me is those individual understanding that you get from all these wonderful souls that finally own their experience, because it takes a lot of courage to actually come out and say, I'm not in the box, you know, to actually own. I call it coming out the space closet, which I think a number of people are doing, or almost feeling obliged now to come out because it's time to do this disclosure from the ground up, as I call it, like Dr. Olson, for example, and Dr. Batchelor. But one of the fascinating things with this is that when I'm looking at the big picture is that, as one 12-year-old said, this planet has been at this point 3 times before and it didn't make it. But this time there's a 95% chance that we're going to make it. So for those that want to, that are worried about the chaos and everything that's going on at the moment, I think that's a very important statement coming again from a 12-year-old. And the reason I give them so much credibility is because there's a clarity with the children that are coming in now, a clarity of their role, why they've come and what have you. And the fact that too, as we, and one of the things that is fascinating is about what a lot of people are afraid of, this hybridization, you know, are we getting these hybrids and they're coming to take over the world kind of attitude. And I wanted to mention something that a 16-year-old told me about this. And he basically said, we're all hybrids, of course. He was talking about at least 12 different ET races that are part of our DNA makeup. And he said, and all it really means is that as we change in frequency and our frequency rises, we are tapping into more of our extraterrestrial heritage. So for some people, their frequency will be part of the Pleiadian aspect of them. So they feel they're from the Pleiades, or the Arcturian aspect of them, because that's the frequency they've reached. So all we're doing as we become activated is tapping into our heritage, our cosmic heritage, and the frequency as we become more and more aware, we will tap into all of that. So we'll be aware of our links to many different species, and with that bring in the abilities and the understanding and more of our multidimensional heritage, so that ultimately we will be fully activated, which is the way that he described, you know, he actually described it. So for me, that makes an absolute, you know, it feels very congruent to what I'm seeing, because so many people are fearful. Oh, you know, these people that are saying they're hybrids, part grey, part human, or part reptilian, or whatever, or part whatever, does this mean they're all coming and taking over? Look, we're all part of them, and there's no taking over. That we're, you know, I've come to really understand that we're all from the stars. We've all been many of these different species. As a 10-year-old explained to me that he came through a portal in the sun, so he's coming from another dimension. Another, in the book, there's a young man who's an artist, and he said that he was taken to his origin in another dimension. he had to interpret star maps because they're taught how to interpret star maps. They're taught how to fly craft. These are some of the things that they're being taught. One has to say why. That's another level. But what he's producing in his artwork, he said, is actually triggering consciousness, so that when people see his artwork, it is actually making a change within their consciousness so that they can open up more to their multidimensional nature. So everything these children are bringing in are acting as catalysts for us, triggers for us, so that if we're ready and we've reached a certain frequency, we can access it. And that is what is so fascinating, the complexity, but the beauty of it in terms of helping us to understand our true nature. So you're coming in from this wonderful omniverse sense of the grandeur of this plan, but also with that is the grandeur of on the ground, how this is actually occurring.
Right, right. I'd like to ask you some very specific questions for understanding exactly what the new human is, both at the soul level, but also at the body level. Would that be okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, because I'm a bit confused myself, to be honest. Now, recently we did a program on the human, the history of the relationship between the reptilians and the humans, the Draco reptilians and the humans in the galaxy, say, which has been a very turbulent one, to say the least. And what came out of there is the following, that at least at the body level, at least this is what was said in that program, that the current model, our current model of avatar, Homo sapiens sapiens, our body into which our souls incarnate, our body, our brains, is a result of a compromise. And that is because our planet is shared essentially on a power arrangement by humans and reptilians. That is, there's and this comes from the war between Atlantis and Lemuria, which were the wars between the reptilians and the humans out of Atlantis. That the reptilians were at the table when Homo sapiens was designed, and they insisted that there be a reptilian component to the human brain, because the Atlans were colonists from the Pleiades, and they only had a two-part brain, a mammalian brain and a neocortex, the rational part. And so when Homo sapiens was designed, we have a three-part brain. We have a reptilian brain, and then a mammalian brain, and then a neocortex, which is our rational part. And the reptilians got that in there so that they would feel some sense of control over the surface humans. At least this is one version. I don't know whether that's factual or not, but this is one version that researchers from that strand propose. And it carries it out, because if you look at modern physiology and biology, they call it the reptilian brain. Now, and that's why we have so much conflict. Out of the reptilian brain comes duality thinking. I win, you lose, flight, fright, etc., etc. Okay, so now, is the new human, the new humans, the kids, Is it that their souls are new and they are incarnating into the Homo sapiens sapiens avatars or bodies? Or is the whole package new? Are these new souls that are incarnating into a new package and a new brain that doesn't have that reptilian base to it?
It's a good question. The information that I have is that they have an upgrade body, that they
Oh,
operate.
they do have an upgraded body.
They operate faster. So everything is accelerated, including their thinking, of course, which
Yeah.
is 10 times faster than, and that's why the ADHD can't handle the pedestrian way we teach, because they get bored, because they're operating 10 times faster.
Yeah, of course. Because, and the reason that they would do it is because their DNA is different.
Exactly.
Of course, that's it. That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that it's their upgraded, so that we're only using a very small percentage of our DNA. We're only using a small percentage of our brains. And so that when they come in, a larger percentage of their DNA has been activated, a larger percentage of their brains have been activated, so that they're actually a new and improved model. They are the new Earth human, basically. Yes. They're the new Earth human. So that people like us are kind of transition models. And, you know, on a good night, we can see I can see the fifth dimension. I can see the new Earth, you know, on the odd moments. And then, you know, depending on our personal history, we don't know what the transition is going to be. There are all sorts of theories about the sun. There are going to be all sorts of solar activities. We're going to go into high, you know, particle zones in space that will, you know, assist in this process. There's all sorts of lore in this ascension thing. So do you find that we're getting a high degree of specificity in how this process is going to unfold?
I think what I'm seeing is different programs for different abilities. For example, what's interesting, again, with what we're seeing with some forms of autism is not only are they highly telepathic, the other thing that, because they can see and feel frustration, feel if someone's not handling being around them or whatever, because they are taking in so much at the same time. For example, one autistic young girl explained that the reason she didn't look someone in the eye is because when she looks at someone in the eye, she's getting 1,000 images in one go of that person, which completely, you know, to manage and struggle with, explains how much information that they're trying to assimilate. But we're expecting them to see it like this, you know, through the eye of a needle, and saying, no, that's reality. And they're saying, no, this is reality. So, you know, again, we're the dysfunctional ones. These are the ones that can explain to us what we need to understand about their reality, so that they're bringing us into the understanding of the multidimensional nature of their experience. And this is what we have to do, is start listening to them. You know, when you get a young girl, and I spoke to her briefly about her experience being taken to another planet by her ET family, and explained how they were showing her how to levitate, showing her how to use the third eye, showing how they do genetic engineering in different species, different plants, different animals. She said, and of course, one of my abilities is with the elements. I can control the wind and I can control the clouds. And she said, and that's part of my new job, which I'll be working with at a certain point. Now, she's quite aware of this at 8 years old. that this is something she can do. And she's not the only one that's explained to me that she said there are other star kids that can, you know, deal with others, with storms, that can control the weather in different ways. These are the kinds of abilities they're talking about. This isn't just about moving something from one place to another, but actually affecting the planetary movements, affecting the weather. All these kinds of things are their abilities. And we have to really understand that this is how it is for them. You know, what we call supernormal will become normal. And one of the 9-year-olds in Europe said to me, Mary, human beings are actually incredible, but they won't realize how incredible and amazing they are till they believe it first. So this is all about us opening our minds to our potential, which the children are coming in to show us. They're showing us by what they can do and what their abilities are. And from that, as we open up, then we open up our own abilities too. It's very much a kind of ripple effect, you know, of what we call the 100th monkey, really, because she said at least 50% of the planet are starseeds. That was a few years ago. I don't know what it is now.
50% of the planet is starseed.
Yeah.
Oh, you know, I had never heard that before. I had heard in the area of 2%.
Yeah.
The problem is, she said, is that many of them end up going to, you know, the regular education, the schools where they are educated out of their light. And she said, so many of them end up falling by the wayside because the teacher, she said, just program them and press the keys. And this is why I also talk about in the book a new kind of education. And this new education has been brought to me by a number of educators that are starseeds themselves, that have said, I have always known that we've had to create a new way for these new children. And one of the educators has got a curriculum for them, because she said what we're really meant to do is assist them in their awareness. So the idea is that we create a place for these children where we support and nurture them while they tell us what they need to be all they can be. So it's not about us telling them, it's them telling us, because they've come in as the teachers. We're just there to provide the space for them to be able to manifest what they've come here to do. So this is an absolute reversal of the way we understand education right now.
Well, if 50% of the planet is starseed, that means you have to have a transformation of human society.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, then that means that corresponds to the separation of worlds, 50-50. It's quite balanced. Now, have you heard any accounts to what the separation of worlds looks like?
Yes, a number of things. And in fact, I'm just looking for that particular slide where I'm just trying to find out where he talks about, Zach talks about the new Earth. Here we go. Zach, this 16-year-old, he's just older than that now. He's actually one of those in a film called Gods Among Us, which is a new documentary film out by Caroline Corey. And in it, Zach speaks one of the light languages. But about a year ago, he explained to me about the new Earth. And this is what he said. My understanding, there is a new Earth, but it's not necessarily new. We are just moving into a new vibration, but to us it's new. It's been there for a long time. It's been waiting for our arrival. Gaia is already at the destination she wishes to be. She is waiting for us to move with her. She's moving into a higher frequency, a collection of similar frequencies. And he said, so I said to him, so what the children are really saying is that when we're awakened, we'll be able to move more with Gaia into this plane of awareness and reality. And he said, yes, but we are not necessarily moving with her, just moving space around us to get to her, because she's in one position and we're in another position, which exists in the same space. So that was how he described it. And you can interpret that how you wish. But it sort of makes sense to me, in the sense that as we move frequencies, then we leave 3D behind. We don't need 3D because we've moved from that now to a space of this, this evolved consciousness of the new human, the new humanity.
Now, what would those of us who are driving around in avatars that came into the planet around the time of Pearl Harbor, what would we do? I mean,
the older models.
With the older models. I mean, I'm just kind of curious. I mean, do we kind of up our frequency and sort of turn into light bodies? Is that what we do?
Perhaps I could answer that, Alfred.
Yeah, sure, please.
Look, I've been really enjoying your conversation. Fantastic information, loving it all. How I see it, because I experience this, ability to move into different frequencies. And when I am actually embodying these higher frequencies and feel like I'm not functioning in the 3D reality that I knew and experiencing something different, it's falling into that space of fearlessness and sort of a joy and peace and love and a carefreeness that is absolutely amazing. And it is our birthright. And this is how we can function when we have more activated DNA and an ability to tap into the different dimensions and frequencies. And what it means is that we are living from a space that is so peaceful and joy-filled that we don't actually get into conflict or stress or angst and have sort of so many issues that come up, because when we're embodying those frequencies and actually emanating them, we're actually setting up a feedback loop for more of that to come to us. So it just becomes a much lighter way of being. And I say it's in the world and not of the stickiness, not of the density, not of the fear-based programs, of the lack, of the failing, of the feeling of not being good enough, not being worthy, not quite getting there, constantly sort of wondering what's going to happen, anxiety about our future, because we're living in such a present moment that feels so fulfilled, and it really starts becoming, it is a loop that then becomes more of our reality. We feel sustained regardless of our situation. It's quite fascinating.
Right. Yeah.
And I think, and really, listening to you talking about your understanding of what had happened to humanity, I mean, this is where I come in with my work, is this understanding that humanity really at our natural state is one of peace, love and joy. Yet there's been technologies applied to us to prevent us from being in that state, that we have somehow been suppressed into a 3D dense reality that runs fear-based programs. And the technologies that I talk about are, past life karmic experiences, that we're being reincarnated with these programs already in us, sort of setting us up to have a sort of low-grade fear-based anxiety about, our condition here on the planet. And then we inherit family lineage programming. And I think that this was all sort of fed into us and set us up. And then we've had sort of matrix reflecting back, the way we're meant to behave and society's conditioning. And then I think that there's also other actual technologies in the forms of, nanotechnologies and plasma devices and electromagnetic frequencies that are all about sort of keeping us confined in this denser reality. And when we activate and awaken more of our DNA and embody more of our frequencies, those things start to fall away. So we're not being conditioned by all of those technologies, and we get to experience what I see as free will, because I think when you've got so much of that controlling mechanism applied, your actual ability to find your free will from that sovereign state of a high frequency multidimensional being. It's difficult to access. And I think more and more of us are waking up to this and saying we don't consent anymore to this level of suppression and control. And I think that the new children are just, it's so fantastic because we've got them leading the way, knowing and remembering. They don't come in with the amnesia that we've had. You know, we've had mind wipe between each incarnation. And here are these children coming in with memory of where they're from, what their roles are. They remember their off-world experiences. They remember their, you know, origins, their starseed connections, their galactic families. And they are coming here to inspire us and to further activate us. They come in embodying the frequencies, more activated, and by being around them and near them, they're activating remembrance in us as well. So, you know, it's setting up for us to actually ascend into different frequencies, you know, to really, to get that new earth. So, you know, it's brilliant. I think it's also interesting when you talk about we're all coming with different understandings and perspectives because we're all bringing different pieces of the puzzle. So your work, you know, is in a certain way. Mine is in another way. Mary's is obviously, you know, collating and researching all of this information. And we're Venn diagrams, all sort of bringing pieces of puzzles, trying to understand what has been so unavailable to us, particularly, you know, our older generations. It's been unavailable for us to even have these concepts, and certainly it's not been taught. This information has really been hidden knowledge. So, yeah, fascinating. It's a brilliant time to be on the planet, and, you know, we are waking up.
Right. So, have both of you or either of you found that what I would call the resistance of the matrix, wanting to keep as many of its 3D captives captive as possible from not ascending, is that increasing or decreasing?
From my point of view, it's, you know, it's an ongoing game. I think that their technologies are advancing, but at the same time that we are getting a natural ability to awaken and evolve. We've got assistance from off-world beings coming in and helping guide us. You know, we have the new children, and we have, you know, photonic light packages coming in and actually activating our DNA. So things are being set up for us to evolve and ascend. But at the same time, technologies are being brought in to actually try and, you know, stop this ascension, so that we have, you know, more devices, more electromagnetic frequencies, more subliminal messages in, you know, advertising or movies, or we have more judgments being made within societies about people that are coming with abilities and skills. We have, you know, vaccines, pharmaceuticals, chemtrails. All of this is, in my opinion, designed to prevent what is a natural evolution. However, I believe that there is nothing that we can't overcome, that when we embody higher frequencies, activate more of our dormant DNA, take self-responsibility and peel off our own triggering and our own programs, you know, often with the assistance of others or being in communities of people that understand this way of being, then we can overcome anything that's being done and applied to us, because we are amazing multidimensional beings. That's how I see it from my perspective, and in the work that I do and the people that I'm assisting.
Right. What sort of work do you do, and how does it relate to the general process, for example, that Mary has been talking about?
So, as I have discussed with you in my previous interview, you know, I went from a mainstream medical doctor to what I call a multidimensional physician from my own awakening that was quite extreme and profound. And after that awakening, and after I sort of grounded and embodied more of the multidimensionality, it means that when I'm working with people, I'm actually bringing the frequencies in and around me and assisting other people to tap into those frequencies of their multidimensional self. We are living in different realities at the same time, but when we're in our human mind body costume, the ability to connect up to that has been suppressed. So what I do is embody these frequencies, and often I'm seen by patients, particularly when it's one-on-one in person, they actually see me shape-shifting into other beings that are coming forth. So I somehow embody essences of other healers from other times, so I can take on the form of an ancient realized being, particularly the one that activated me in the temple in India back in 2014. And so they'll come through, and sometimes it'll be a flashing of different essences and different beings, and even an alien being. So I'm embodying frequencies and tapping into the different realities that are overlaying this reality. And that's often seen by people, and particularly the younger ones, the teenagers, will pick it up immediately, even if they're not awake. And I certainly can relate to what Mary was saying about the child that she said that had that ability. She didn't want to look at people because she kept seeing the different aspects of them. And that's certainly what I can bring forth in a session. So it's proving that something is happening in a multidimensional sense, tapping into the holographic reality that is available, that has not been evident to us in our suppressed state. And what I do is I then sit with the person, bringing in the frequencies, and start clearing off that is in their way of finding their true self and activating more of their DNA and getting them back to a natural state of peace, love, joy, well-being, self-healing, respect for themselves, respect for others, lessening their, the negative aspects or the sabotaging aspects of themselves. So that's the work that I do.
Right. So in a sense, you're sort of an on the ground alternative to an abduction.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, you're sort of the alternative would be to be abducted and to meet an ET, but and you're bringing these galactic frequencies through yourself down on the ground. Am I over-interpreting?
And absolutely. And look, it really is fascinating watching people's response, and it depends on their receptivity. And they don't even need to be that awake and aware. I had a woman not so long ago come and see me, and she said, she really doesn't understand. A lot of what we're talking about would really be mind-blowing for her. She's not, been on the path of awakening, but came to me because she was guided to see me. And her expression was, I feel like there is something on me that is stopping me from making decisions for my highest good. And this was an amazing interpretation of what I see as an entity that was actually, attached to her and really preventing her from finding her own inner being, peace and joy. So I removed this with my bringing in the frequencies. This entity zipped off, disappeared. She then said, oh my God, I feel completely free. She went through quite a physical reaction as this was happening, and this entity actually lifted off. And there was a bit of a tussle at a point where it didn't actually want to leave, and she was quite distressed because you could tell she was used to having it, and so letting it go was sort of feeling different, and she was feeling vulnerable, but eventually this thing lifted. Well, she then cracked open into a multidimensional reality and started bringing in a knowing. She said, I know I'm not from here. I'm actually from the stars. This isn't my original home. I've come here to actually help. There's a shift going on. She started speaking like she'd been, involved in the movement for many years. She was bringing through latest information, having walked in as being somebody who was unawake, to cracking open and experiencing, and the love and the joy. And she said, I just feel amazing. I know I'm not alone. I'm supported. There are beings here helping me, and I can be guided here to fulfill my mission. Now that's extraordinary. Though, you know, that was just such an incredible experience for her to open up to that. And, you know, it's like windows open up, knowings and understandings come in. But, you know, that's not necessarily the end of the job. You know, she then needs to do further work embodying these frequencies and peeling off other sabotaging blocks and programs that prevent her from really living in that frequency and knowing and being able to pull in that information and feel a sense of peace and support regardless of what's happening in her life.
Yeah, and you can do this not only in person, but you've also been able to do it online as well, as I understand it.
Yeah, so I'm doing these Skype sessions, and what's so heartening is to see how, you know, there is no space and time. You know, I can immediately get these frequencies, you know, generated for the person who's on the other side of the world, and they're experiencing that. And some of them are even watching me shape shift and seeing that as well, although it tends to happen more to people in person, but it is starting to happen more to people on the Skype. And yes, these frequencies come in and actually alter their, you know, their beingness and start activating them. And I can do the same work. I had a woman the other day and I was doing work on her, and, you know, it was all about, you know, she had a blocked heart. She just felt, you know, unworthy. And when we were working, she actually felt a device leaving her chest. She said it stood up beside her, veiled as her, and said, you'll never get rid of me. And this awakened my further understanding to these plasma technologies that are actually sort of enmeshing into our very being and veiling themselves as us, as our ego programming or our sabotaging belief systems. And we have to bring these frequencies in and say, we don't consent to this anymore. We don't want this interference, this negativity to suppress us from our natural state. So that was fascinating. This is on a Skype. She had been a fairly awake person, had been doing lots of work on herself for, say, 10 years, but had felt recently very blocked. And it was interesting what popped out of her. And she described it as a device. It literally pulled out of her chest, stood up beside her, veiled as her, and said, you're not going to get rid of me. And she had a bit of anxiety about, oh, should I let this go? And I said, no, this is not in your highest good. And my work is always about what is in your highest good and the highest good for humanity. And when we blasted this with frequency, it disappeared and she felt completely different and has felt completely different since. Much more, you know, self-loving, you know, peaceful and joy-filled since that procedure. So, you know, it's phenomenal for me. I mean, I just sit here just going, wow, this is extraordinary that I can tap into these frequencies and these things can happen for people. And, you know, and it's heartening to see that more and more people are waking up and understanding that this is a level of work that can take place. So
right. Now, Mary, could I ask you, listening to what Maree is saying, does this resonate in the research that you've been doing? Does what Maree is saying, do you see individuals doing, or have you seen individuals doing, or does it resonate in other parts of your research what Maree is doing?
Absolutely. Maree is one that fortunately has this background of a medical background, but I'm meeting many different healers and those working with alternative or complementary therapies that are finding themselves working with frequency, either through, you know, crystal bowls, or they may tone, or they may come out with the light languages. All of it is frequency. And they will say that my job is to activate someone's DNA or whatever. So we're getting different individuals with different skills. Some are working with earth energies, some are working with animals, some are working with plants, some are working with different humans. But the interesting thing is, what we finally come to understand, that we do live in a unified field of consciousness. So, you know, when Maree talks about, you know, being able to work with people multidimensionally over Skype. I mean, I do hypnosis over Skype. I'm doing the same thing. I'm working with someone in an altered state. I know that part of my consciousness is there. So the other interesting thing is that when you can take people into an altered state, as I've done many times, and they will get the frequencies given to them during their session, that these beings will come in and they will actually feel the energies coming through them saying, I'm getting a download, or I'm getting this happening. So all we need to do often is provide that frequency space, which allows them to tap into it, which is exactly what, you know, Maree's doing, is that she's embodying the frequencies. And what happens with that is, and I've been shown that the frequencies can come in your tone, they can come in your energy field. You embody those frequencies, and it's like a ripple effect that you're around someone and you will affect them whether you're aware of it or not. This is how these frequencies happen. Through the voice, for example, can be another way those frequencies come in. And the toning, the languages, all of those contain frequencies that are activating people. I've seen this happen so many times in my presentation. I will deliberately play star languages, show symbols, show scripts and artwork, because they are triggering the individuals in the presentation. One nurse came up to me afterwards and said, as soon as I heard the light language, I had to get a piece of paper and look, I've just written this script, what does it mean? So she'd been triggered enough to actually manifest more of her, that awareness that had been triggered through the frequencies in the presentation. You know, these are the many brilliant ways it's actually occurring, which is fabulous. And the children know it. When I was talking to a 9-year-old, who originally I was talking to his father, and his father said, my son wants to speak to you. And I said, well, why does he want to speak to me? And the young lad of 9 said, well, Mary, it's because of your frequency. So first of all, my frequency was the reason he needed to speak to me, and explain to me how, you know, not only do these children recognize frequency and recognize, you know, authenticity, he explained to me how he recognized he'd been picked up and taken underground. And he said there was a woman in a uniform. There was technology to one side. I was sitting in a chair. He said, I knew what she was doing. The technology was to lower my frequency, to take information from me. And he said to put information, inaccurate information in, but I kept my frequency too high. They didn't know that. They thought it was working, but I knew that's what I needed to do to stop that happening. So what you've got there is a young avatar, really, of 9 years old, knowing exactly what to do with these kinds of protocols. Where I spoke to an 8-year-old whose mother does a lot of work in a similar way to yourself. And she said, do you know, Mary, she said, I deal with the jinn that are sent to my mother from these agencies. So she was quite aware that these jinn came in attacking her mother, but she could deal with them. I spoke to a 9-year-old only a couple of weeks ago that explained to me here in Queensland that he deals with a lot of the lower entities, and explained, well, I got to know what to do, he said. And when I got to know what to do, I now go out of body and I see where they're targeting children, creating the nightmares and the fear. He says, and I just deal with them. Now, this is a 9-year-old explaining to me how he understands how to work with all those energies. His mother said, Mary, even as a child, he was talking to me in light language, and I would respond in light language, but I didn't know what I was saying. He can translate it. Now, this is a 9-year-old doing this kind of work. This is what I mean, is these new ones are already there, you know, but the great thing is the older generations, the older models, are being assisted to come up to speed. And a lot of it is because every one of us is putting out those frequencies, and it's affecting the planet on multiple levels. And this is what's happening. And this is very hard to dumb down when you've got children. And a 16-year-old explained to me that when she's a starseed in Spain, and she said Mary, I've known for many years that I'm a starseed. She said, 6 years old, there were black helicopters monitoring my energy signature. She said, but I knew about it. When I became a teenager, I was feeling like they were trying to tell me to go and become part of these covert groups and what have you. And she said, I knew what they were doing. They were trying to get me to go to America and to be caught up in it. But I wasn't having it because I already knew what the agenda was. So these kids know when they're lying. They know who's authentic. They know about the chemtrails. They know about the fact that the moon is an artificial structure. They know about what's happening on Mars. They know what's happening on the moon. You know, this is what I mean. There is nothing hidden from them because they have the ability to tap into it through their own awareness. So this is what, you know, these covert agencies are really struggling with now. Although they might dumb some of them down with Ritalin and all these other drugs and what have you, there's still plenty out there that are managing to supersede that kind of programming and not get pulled in, which is what's so wonderful.
Now, you mentioned Mars, and there are various chapters in the book on schools on Mars. I wondered if you could talk about that for our audience.
Well, the most fascinating thing is when the children explain to me, either physically or out of body, they're taken on spacecraft to lots of different planets. You know, some in other dimensions, parallel universes, different timelines, all of that is part of it. But what I've heard from many of the children is that when they go up on the craft, they are taught a whole range of complex subjects. As one 8-year-old, when I said, well, what kind of complex subjects? And he said, well, it's too complex for you. So in other words, I wasn't going to understand. Probably right if it's physics. But the interesting thing was when I had 2 young girls, both the same age, and one of the young girls had, when she was taken to Mars, she was shown the domes on Mars. She was shown the beings that were under the surface and how we're there. She was also seeing mantid beings and grey beings that were teaching her. She said the mantid beings spoke telepathically to her, but they'd also shown her a particular symbol. And she had a bit of an understanding, but she wanted to know if anyone else could tell her more about the symbol. Fortunately, I had another family in the US whose daughter, Alice, I call her, had been taken to Mars and being taught on Mars by a hybrid child and a lot of other young children. And I said to the father, could you ask your daughter if she's ever seen this symbol? He came back and he said, I didn't say anything to her about the symbol. I didn't say where it was from or anything. I asked her if she'd seen it. And she said, oh, yes, she said, I've seen that on the craft when I've been taken to Mars. And it means this, this, and this about we know who you are, etc., etc. So she had a full understanding what that symbol was. And then I sent that back to the other family and said, this is the feedback I've got on it. And the other little 7-year-old said, that's exactly right. That's exactly what it means. So I've got 2 children who've never spoken to one another. Both have been taken to Mars, both been educated when they've been taken to Mars, actually describing in exact detail what this symbol means that both of them had seen. So you get kind of corroboration like this, and it's very hard to dismiss it because it is so compelling. But they know that we've got to Mars. They know that we have stuff on the moon. One 12-year-old explained that there's technology on the moon that is part biological, part technological. And what he said was that was put there the last time he was here, when he was here before. And it's to tell the public now that we've been here before. It's to help with what's happening. So he was quite aware that they'd left this technology for a time in his future when he incarnates again, which is now.
I see. Now, whose schools are these? That is, who owns and runs them, and who's transporting them back and forth?
A variety of different types of beings, from the various mantid type beings, various types of greys, but sometimes there are humanoids. There are those that are hybrids. One little girl explained the hybrids as having funny hair, and she was part sort of, she said really funny kind of frizzy hair, and she was part human, part not human, part alien, she said. That was how she described it. So they know the ones that are hybrid children. They can see them, and they will often say, well, their eyes are different, but they'll all play together, she said. And she was fed there, and she was given something that made her feel love in her heart, she said. Some food that made her feel love in her heart.
I see. I guess but what is the civilization that is organizing this? Is this a nation on the earth? Is this part of the Greys? Is this what is the civilization that is doing this?
My understanding is there is a, if you like, some kind of galactic organization.
I see.
And they've all got different abilities, or if you like, when you've got souls that are coming from all over the universes with different skills. So they're coming in, and they will have a representative in this galactic organization that is working with all these different programs, because it is, my understanding is, we're only touching the tip of the iceberg of understanding what all the programs are. But there's a multitude of complex programs where certain individuals from certain parts, other dimensions, have come in with certain skills. So they will be orchestrated by their own non-physical team, as I call it, their own star family,
right.
with certain mandates, and so there's this kind of cooperative matrix, if you like, of intelligences and higher intelligences that are orchestrating this.
Right now, because so go ahead, Marie. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say that it's a benevolent setup, a multi-dimensional benevolent setup, and some of these beings are actually, are us. They're us in another dimension, in another form, that are assisting these programs off planet. I've had experiences where I did a Skype session with a woman from the UK who immediately recognized me and said, we've done work together in another dimension. We've been on a ship together. And when she started telling me her story that she needed some help with, I already knew the story, and I already knew that I'd done work with her. It was just one of those sort of multi-dimensional deja vu type experiences. So there's lots going on that we are unaware of, and I think some of us are actually doing some multi-dimensional roles as other, in other sort of physicalities, I guess, in other dimensions, assisting with things. And some people have said they've seen me up on craft doing, benevolent, multi-dimensional physician type surgery. And, these are people coming forward saying, oh, I know you, I've seen you before. Now, I don't have great recall of that, but something in me often resonates, or I do recall part of a story that somebody has told me. So, some of these beings are us.
Right. So I'm just trying to see, look, see, here you have the 3D Earth, the old Earth, and here you have the 5D Earth, the new Earth, and here's the old Earth, and it's loaded with nuclear missiles. It's loaded with polluted oceans. It's loaded with chemtrails. It's loaded with all sorts of nanoparticles, and it's loaded with a matrix of beings that are ready to go at war with each other, even though 80% of the humans probably just want to raise their families and have a good time. And then here you have the new Earth, that's a frequency waiting for the humans to migrate, that are going to somehow migrate over here. And then here you have the schools that are kind of preparing the new consciousnesses. I mean, it kind of sounds like that process. and then we failed 3 times before to make kind of a transitional jump, but now we have a 95% chance. Now, do you have any information as to how this process is going to transpire, or what's going to occur, or do we have thoughts about that? You know, information coming from these things. Go. Anyone?
I love your concepts and your models of that. I see it as this, the dimensions are on top of each other. So the new earth is actually on top of this dimension, and it's a matter of raising frequencies to actually exist in that new earth that actually is here now, overlaying, if that makes sense, and the different multidimensional frequencies overlay, so they come in to this sort of on top of, and we access it by raising our frequencies. So I know by going up in frequency that then I'm experiencing different beings in different dimensions. I don't have great information on exactly. I think when we try and think in our 3D mind, how is this going to all unfold, we can't exactly see it and know it. But when we get this sense that we are being helped, it's a benevolent process that's going on, and we are transitioning, and there is so much help, and so many people are gathering, and the children coming in, that it is just getting momentum and unfolding. But I feel we're going to transition with more sort of chaos and things breaking down, structures sort of, being brought to light as not being supportive of this process, and things will need to, people are going to need to transition, and the structures on the planet are going to need looking at, breaking down, and reformatting for this ascension. So how that's exactly going to look, I don't know, but I have great faith that it's all heading in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Mary, have you gotten in any of your research or that you report in the book how this transition is occurring, and how you arrived at that figure of 95%, etc.?
Well, I'm going on what the children have told me, with a lot of the reason why they're here and what they've come to do. The 12-year-old was clear that it was at least 90% chance that we were going to make it this time, was his understanding. He talked about, I think he was the one that talked about the 7 that will come. There was another young man who was translating a lot of the artwork. His mother was showing him some of the artwork from an experiencer called Tracy Taylor, and she just wanted to know from her 4-year-old and 7-year-old what they thought of the pretty pictures. And they both said to her, they're from the aliens, separately, without any front loading whatsoever. And then the 7-year-old went on to talk about the pyramids and how they were expanding energy, about the crafts that come through the portals, and went into detail of what he could see in the drawings that she'd done. He was talking about the 7 that will come, and he was talking about the cat beings and various types of beings. My real overall sense from all the young children and the young adults is that we're very close to some event, and it's a paradigm shifting event. And this is sooner rather than later. This is not a couple of generations down the track. There is something going to happen that is going to shift consciousness. What that means could be a number of things. It could mean devastation on some level with, the planet itself, or it could mean that there is something that's undeniable that happens on the planet that will bring people up to speed on how everything is everything they've learned is wrong, and that there's a whole new paradigm. So whatever that is seems to be a combination of that possibility. Another, one 7-year-old, it was explaining that when we reach a certain crucial point, all of those that have reached a certain awareness, she talked about these she called them pink ETs, are going to take us all to another place. While this planet needs to be sorted out, when we get up to speed with our skills, we're going to be brought back and we're going to fix it.
Oh, so that's kind of a mass evacuation
Yes.
scenario.
Some have said that where
Or
there'll be
mass elevation or something.
That's right. That we will be taken, and by the pinky teas, she calls them. So
that may be a different, just into a different dimensional frequency, so that we're not part of it. I think just touching on your point about that something's going to happen sooner or later, I think what's very interesting is that experience I had with that woman who came, who said she had something on her back and I removed it, and then she cracked open into this greater awareness and was being downloaded that she wasn't from here, and these amazing, that she had a mission, and she knew she had a galactic star family, etc. She also later on in the session came forth with information that something was going to happen on this planet sooner rather than later, and it was big. There was going to be a lot of devastation and a lot of loss. I didn't like hearing it, and I said, oh really, maybe you're tapping into an old timeline, maybe that's something. And she was quite adamant that something was going to happen. And I think that it is a cracking open, and there is going to, from what she was saying, and again, she's not a researcher, she was new, she wasn't awake and aware, she just came in with this information during the session, that something was going to an events of some form to actually crack us open. And so we are getting that information coming forward from various people. And, who knows how it's all going to unfold, but we'll relate to some multidimensional frequencies and help others that need it.
Right. So what are some of the strategies that you recommend that you either individually or collectively recommend to people in these times?
Thanks, Mary. Well, look, for me, it's really about rising to that multidimensional self. It means bringing in a higher perspective to what's happening and understanding, who we really are at our essence, and actually remaining centered. And as I said before, it's in the world and not of it. So we're not triggered. So we're not triggered into desperate fear, depression, reactivity, aggression, trying to stay centered and self-aware and self-responsible for how we're navigating through what unfolds. And this will be assisted by the benevolent beings, by your higher dimensional self, by stepping into higher frequencies and getting a better perspective of what's going on, and understanding that we are infinite beings. We are infinite light beings connected to source energy. And so, in fact, what appears to be destructive on the 3D level from a higher perspective will not seem like that at all, given who we are.
Mary, do either the children or do they have recommendations for us?
The children want to be heard, first of all. That's the important thing, is that we listen to them. And the difficulty is that there are many children with parents that may not fully understand what their children are telling them at this point. Often they've got grandparents that do. So that's really fascinating. What seems to be important now is that all of us on the planet that know there's more, that know more about ourselves, but are not owning it. It's about us owning and being authentic. I think this is the most important thing now, is there's this huge discrimination against personal reality, which means you can't own yourself unless you talk about things in an acceptable way in 3D. Now it's time, as I know many of the more enlightened souls on this planet are coming out of the space closet and saying, I know now is the time to speak my truth. And, that's what, Marie's doing. Dr. Lena Olson had an instant healing that said now she's got to speak about her truths. There are people all over the planet now saying, yes, this is my experience, not waiting for other kinds of disclosures or any other drip feeding that's been going across the planet. Because if enough people come out and say, this is my experience, this is my reality, what happens is all of those that have been afraid of being held back through feelings of judgment or, you know, beliefs, other beliefs or whatever, family cultures and what have you, they've been afraid to say, this is who I am. And the more of us that can own that frequency of our truth, the more chance we have then of doing what we've come here to do, because then we can start doing it. It's all about walking our talk. It's not just about saying it. It's actually being it, embodying what we know to be our truth. Whether or not other people want to believe us or not is really irrelevant to what we need to say. It's the authenticity, bringing in that frequency is the way to do it. And the children are the ones that are showing us how to do it if we give them the forum to do it. And this is why, you know, I've talked about creating a place where these children can own who they are and can show us how we can start changing the paradigm, because that's where we're going to, is a whole new paradigm of reality that is our true nature. It's actually who we are. And that is what's activating the DNA, is as soon as you're authentic, you're allowing then for those frequencies to come in, because you're centered. You become integrated. And when you're integrated, you're sending out the frequency that says, I'm ready. I'm ready, guys. I'm ready to be part of who you are and who I am and who I really am. And really, that is what the new human is. It is an integrated individual that is totally authentic with the frequencies of their galactic heritage.
Well, I think I was mentioning before our program that spontaneously, I didn't know that that was going to happen to me, but that happened to me just this past month on May 24th, 2017, my 75th birthday. I decided and I went public, and I had always hidden it that I was an extraterrestrial abductee. And that's how I became an extraterrestrial, how I became an exopolitician. Exopolitics was developed aboard an ET spaceship. And, you know, I was a government official and a lawyer and a law professor and blah, 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 you know, and if I'd come out and say, and all of this happened on a spaceship and it was coordinated with President Jimmy Carter, and, you know, I've got a witness with a chrononaut who's in the secret time travel program. I mean, everybody would have just slammed against the wall, but that's the truth. And so for the past, since 1973, I guess that's more than 40 years, I just had various layers, and finally the layers are time to come off. And so I'll be presenting at a conference in a couple of weeks. And I published various articles, and there was a press release that went out that all of this happened on spaceships with President Carter and myself and Andrew Basiago, and it's witnessed and the whole bit, and people will be able to follow it. And in a way, the things that are happening to the young children, you know, I used to think of myself as, quote, an early indigo, you know, but I've been sort of an undercover abductee for so many years. I just couldn't say it because, you know, I was scared that all these people come and hit me over the head and say nasty things about me and say, oh, you're not credible anymore. You know? But now, the vista that was opened, I mean, on the spaceship with the ETs, I mean, we were able to coordinate the election of President Carter. We were able to coordinate, as the first disclosure president, we were able to coordinate my the 1977 Carter White House extraterrestrial communication project. Just in 1973, just a couple of years before, I had been a government official protecting the environment. I didn't know anything about ETs. And, you know, just a few years later, I was doing the whole ET thing because I'd been prepared up there. And then with Annie Bashago, who was to be a US chrononaut and perhaps a future president, another American disclosure president, perhaps on the new Earth. I mean, we don't know what the scenarios are, but this has been extraordinary. So this is kind of my own new Earth birth that happened on my birthday, which was on the day that Dr. Carl Johan Kalaman, the 64th day of the ninth wave, was May 24th, 2017, which was the day that he said Christ consciousness landed on the planet. So I figured that more humans can understand what I was communicating and they wouldn't freak out.
Yeah.
So, you know, so we can all in our own way, Mary, Maree, and Alfred, communicate to our audience that yes, all of us have experienced multidimensionality and it is happening, and there is a multidimension and there is a new Earth, and we welcome you to it.
Yeah.
Well, I would like to turn it over to you, Mary, if you would like to, you know, kind of add some insight and some overview, some messages that you would like to leave our audience with, and also how people can get in touch with you, because I think that Mary and Maree and these frequencies should really come to the North American continent and begin to elevate it, because so much war and oppression is produced in this continent, and we need to like just get rid of that. And so people who watch this program and who are inspired and who organize conferences where they have the same old tired people who get up and say, oh no, they're all my labs, there are no abductions, they're all my labs. You know, these things are really happening, and you're talking to three people to whom, you know, it's really happened and who deals with the real thing. So if you want to have these three people at conferences plus others, you got them right here. So Mary, please talk to us.
Thank you, Alfred. Well, I am coming to the US. I'm
yes.
coming of October. I'm speaking at the first one, which is the Awareness of Life Expo in Sedona. Then I'm flying to West Virginia and speaking at the Arlington Institute. Then I'm going to Miami for a week.
To where? Sorry, I missed that.
Miami. I'm going to
Miami
for a week. Part of the free organization. I'm going to do presentations there. Boston after that for just over a week. And then finally Detroit at the Awakened and Empowered Expo, because
God,
wants me to speak about the children, because what is brilliant about this is not just about UFOs, guys. This is about human consciousness. And what is great now that a lot of the metaphysical expos are seeing that this is beyond that we're actually talking about how consciousness is changing on this planet with the assistance of these non-human intelligences and advanced higher beings. So that's the wonderful thing. So yes, I'm coming to the US. In the meantime, what is lovely about technology in this sense is all the frequencies are going out on YouTube via your wonderful program and others like this that are actually putting that information out there as well. So, but anyone who wants to contact me, I've got a website, maryrodwell.com.au, or acern.com.au, or my Facebook. There are many different ways to contact me, so that's not an issue. But more than anything, what I'd like to say is, the brilliant thing for me in all these years where so many have been afraid to come out of the space closet because of very good reasons, often professionally and what have you. What is brilliant now is individuals like yourself and Maree, who are standing up tall and saying, you know what, I've been up there, and you know what, that's okay, because that's what's made me who I am. And I celebrate that. I absolutely celebrate everyone who stands up and shows the courage to say, I'm not part of 3D anymore. I'm actually someone who's saying, I know that there is something greater out there and I'm part of it. And that is what I'd like to leave your listeners with.
Beautiful. Maree.
I'm very happy to speak at any conference anywhere and get the information out and people with frequencies and help people to transition and really wake up to who they really are, and get on the mission of, you know, transitioning this planet to a better place, and so that we can all feel our natural state and be in that peace, love, joy, harmony and well-being. In the meantime, I'm actually speaking at a few conferences here in Australia over the next 6 months. I'm doing the Paradigm Shift in the Gold Coast in August. I'm doing a couple of Tolek conferences in October, and then in January, the Afterlife Conference in Coffs Harbour. And I've got a few speaking events in between those other arrangements as well, speaking at the New South Wales Ufology Research Group in Sydney, and a few other bits and pieces. So it's good. I am getting out there and getting to, you know, talk about my experiences and make people aware of how I can assist them. So this is good, but very happy to come to America when anyone wants me to come. That would be great. In the meantime, my Skype sessions are available for people, and I love doing my Skype sessions, helping people, assist them in waking up and transitioning through the difficulties that they're having, and really removing some of the sabotaging programs and really awaken and activate their DNA. And I can be contacted by email, batchelormaree@gmail.com. Otherwise, my website is mareebatchelor.com, or Skype contact is simply Maree Batchelor. And I'm very happy to hear from people, and you know, love to do these sessions with people. So that's great. And really, my parting message is to say that, you know, we are transitioning. Things are really moving ahead. We've got so much evidence of this happening. The fact that the three of us are here today and having this conversation is just proof that we are evolving. And I think it is really good news for humanity, news for the planet. And the more we connect with each other and speak our truth and align with our higher selves and our missions here on the planet, the easier and the faster this process will be. And so thank you for having me on today. It's been great, wonderful to have this discussion, and I've enjoyed it. So thank you.
Well, thank you both very, very much. I know that every time, I mean, for me, I can, for me, having an interview with Mary Rodwell is a very special marker, because over the years, she has, you know, come in, and every time she can sort of report in on what the progress is on the emergence of New Earth, and each time New Earth has emerged even more, and this is like even more. So we're almost, you know, we're there, it's coming. And so I really want to thank you both, because you both are extraordinary beings that are just here, and you give of yourself selflessly and with a degree of excellence that is unmatched. So thank you both very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Alfred. It's a pleasure.
Good enough. Until our next program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, so let me go.
Oh,
Okay.
I had to do the quick swap over to the phone.
Oh, let me just stop.